Hello and welcome everybody to today's episode. We are on Facebook Live and it is episode 18. And just want to welcome everybody that's joining us. For those of you that are joining us live, I'll give you guys just a couple minutes to jump on. If you're watching the replay, again, thank you for being here. Today's broadcast is going to be great, very helpful, especially in this time where everybody is suddenly parents that are homeschooling. I want to know, I would love to hear from you guys. How has this past week gone for you? For some of you, maybe homeschooling is not a new thing. For others, the whole concept may be brand new to you, and suddenly you're inundated with homeschooling. I'm sure that there's been some good moments in it. I'm sure occasionally probably some challenges. So my goal today is that by the end of this broadcast, you will have more tools and be better equipped to be able to help your kids through this time. This time that we live in, we are in I'm very excited about the opportunity. I'm really not happy with what's happening, and it's very sad to see what's happening across the world. However, this is an opportunity that we have to really evaluate, to stop and evaluate where we're at, to evaluate our family, to evaluate where are our children, how are we doing as parents. Sorry about that, guys. I'm not sure what happened. But how are we doing in our parenting efforts, and what is that looking like? What is, if we were to grade ourselves, our kids are in school, they often get grades, and that's how we measure, how they're doing in school. But if you were to give yourself a grade as a parent, what would that look like? And, no condemnation here, but just it's good to kind of check in with ourselves and evaluate what can we improve on. But I believe that with today's broadcast, we're going to be able to encourage you and give you some key tools that will help you in parenting more intentionally. So without further ado, I want to invite my good friend Scott back on the program. Scott, thank you for joining us all the way from Florida.
Hey, Jason, how are you? Thanks for having me.
No problem. Connecting California to Florida. It's pretty amazing to see what's happening across the world, especially here in the United States with online meetings and what's happening online. Everything is now online. And, thank God for the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, what would we do? I mean, a lot of what our kids can do now with their schooling is online. So a lot of their education doesn't have to get shut down just because, businesses all around us are shut down and things are closing their doors. Education can still move forward.
It's awesome.
It is. So again, thank you for joining us. I'm really excited about this broadcast. I think that a lot of parents, if they tune in and engage, will leave within 45 minutes to an hour with some really, really helpful tools to help them maintain peace, and kind of keep, set that atmosphere in the home. Because that's, I think, one of the most important things.
Yep.
I know in your business on what you do professionally, you probably deal with this a lot. But I know in my consulting business, whenever I work with companies, that's one of the things I talk about is, the atmosphere in the office. If that atmosphere is an atmosphere of growth, then people will grow and excel. If it's an atmosphere where nobody's ideas are heard and everybody gets shut down if they want to change something or maybe try a new thing, that really creates an atmosphere where it stunts growth. So as parents, we have the responsibility to set that atmosphere. And I can imagine so many parents now probably don't feel like they have control. They probably don't feel like there's no control here. It's out of control. There's so much time with our kids in this new environment and this new responsibility of homeschooling. I'm sure that there's quite a few parents that are feeling overwhelmed and that lack of control. So let's dive into parenting intentionally. But I definitely think that parenting intentionally starts right now with homeschooling in this time. So let's talk about that for a few minutes, and then we'll
Yeah,
see where this goes.
that's good. When you said that, the word that jumped out to me when you said new responsibility, it was interesting to me because, you know, like we've been given an opportunity to change the way that we look at things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we have to change the way that we look at pretty much everything. Every single service that can be delivered online is going to be, and
Right.
every possible industry that's not delivering online is figuring it out right now, right? And when you said new responsibility, I think it's a really important, like everybody has a new responsibility to be more connected digitally than they ever have been, right? It's an actual requirement. But like as parents, like we've always had the responsibility for our children's education,
Right.
but we've not always taken responsibility for our children's education,
That's good. Yeah.
right?
So
Like
true.
said too quickly, they sound like the same thing, but they're not the same thing. And I think what we're recognizing is the difference in, having the responsibility and taking the responsibility, right? Those verbs, right, are pretty critical. So now we have the opportunity to take a responsibility for their education. And guys, that doesn't mean like making sure they get into Stanford,
Right.
right? It just means like recognizing who your child is, where they're at developmentally, and how to navigate them through these next stages. Because the good news is this, like you made it through elementary school, you made it through middle school, you made it through high school, many of you made it through college. And as a result, like you are uniquely equipped to teach them based off of your own experience.
Right.
So I just want to kind of break the mindset that like I can't do it sort of mindset, because we have to really look in and we have to ask ourselves, just like the difference between having responsibility and taking responsibility.
Yeah.
The same is true of actually like um, needing to homeschool and wanting
Mm.
to homeschool.
Yeah.
Now, there's a significant difference in that, because if we can start to change our language around the new responsibilities that we have, then all of a sudden, like there's a whole bunch of breakthrough available to people. Because
Yeah.
here's what I mean. Um, Early on, in our parenthood, when we first had three kids was like whoa, it was an overwhelming experience. And at one season of life, I had all three, and my wife's dad was not well, and she was in Wisconsin. And I had all three, a full-time job, and I was doing it solo, right? And I remember during that time, I made a shift, and I'd made this briefly in other times in my parenthood, but I made a shift that says I have to be responsible for the kids to I get to be responsible, right? One dad, three kids. And
Right.
I was particularly like my shift particularly came like when we were going to Wisconsin, right? We were going to Wisconsin for my father-in-law's funeral in late December of 2017. And I had three kids by myself on an airplane, which, man, for me, like that was a lot. Like that was just a lot. I had never,
Yeah.
and one of my children she was only three, right? So I had a 3-year-old, I had a 5-year-old, and an 8-year-old, right? It was tough. But I switched my mindset to get to rather than have to, and everything changed,
Yeah.
right? So I think there's a lot of gold there for us to like recognize if we can just change our thought process between I have to and
Mm-hmm.
I get to, all of a sudden that like your ability to homeschool changes, because
Right.
the challenge that you're going to have as a homeschool parent who didn't sign up for this, right? I didn't sign up for this. That's the I have to attitude.
Uh-huh.
To, hey, what could this look like? Is the get to attitude. The difference, the challenge there is that like you might not get to create your own curriculum,
Right.
right? And not my, hint, like not many homeschoolers create their own curriculum either. You know what I mean? But what's happening now is you've got a system within the public school or private school or charter schools that is basically putting the anvil on your back to say, hey, this is what we do in a day. Now go do it. And
Right.
that's not really how homeschool isn't meant to be home at, school at home. It's really meant to be more of like an integrated way of life. that make sense?
Right. Totally. Um, and I'm sure that weight could be overwhelming for parents if they feel like what happens at home now needs to be a copy of what used to happen at school.
Yes.
There's so many different forms. Like you said, each child learns in a different way. And so part of figuring, part of that, of the actual homeschooling process is learning how our children learn and then have fun doing it. And then the more, when we're having fun and when we're enjoying the day, we retain a lot more than if we're stressed out about it, angry. We're not going to retain anything. So then, what good is, a 3-hour class if you're not going to absorb anything or actually learn anything? But by making it fun, slowing down, I think this is also, I was listening to what you were saying about, we now have the responsibility. We're taking the responsibility of homeschooling, of our kids' education. And I think sometimes we might have to slow down a little bit to be able to really do that, even just in our thoughts. I know that for a lot of us, we have a lot going on and probably in some cases, probably even more now. Maybe the pressure is higher. There's more to do, more to get done. But it's important to take that time just to slow down, and really evaluate, okay, how can we do this? What's the, like you said, there's a lot of gold here. How can I pull that out of my children for their education, but then also of our relationship? Mm-hmm. That's the other thing that I see happening here is that as parents engage with their children and begin to work with them, a new side of relationship is going to develop. I know my youngest is 6 and she loves her teacher. Like she loves her and her teacher loves her. They have that relationship. And I've thought sometimes as she's talked about her and, she's like written her birthday card or, she's done different things to show her affection. That's awesome. And, imagine now like that same opportunity, more time to engage and to build that connection with our kids it's a golden opportunity.
Yeah. Well, there's so much richness in what you just said, Jason. Connection is super key, right? But like, I can't help but think like there are people who are watching or listening who are like, connection? Really? Like, I'm just trying to like not cry today.
Right.
I'm just trying to not scream at my kids today. And like, if you're there, like we'll totally unpack connection and how to create those things. But like, we're telling you kind of the thesis of the book, right? The thesis is this: if you engage, you will create connection. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means deeper relationship, right? That means you're invited into parts of your children's lives that for all intents and purposes, you haven't been involved in when they're away for 6, 7, 8 hours a day.
Right.
That's when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. So now you have this opportunity, not burden, an opportunity to engage with your kids. Is it going to be messy? Yeah, 100%. And here's why. Number one, you've got to redefine what success, whatever that means to you right now, looks like. Yeah. And please do yourself a favor. Don't make it look like you being, uninterrupted for 8 hours at a desk in your house getting work done. That's just not success. Because if our definition, let me give you an example. For all you parents who live out there, right? So Jason, I'm going to you're going to be the guinea pig for this test, right? Before you and your wife were married, right? Before you guys had kids, all right? You guys would go on vacation, right? Right? And vacation's awesome. But does the definition of vacation change after you have children?
No. I mean, how you do it does, certainly.
How you do it, right? But like, are you sitting on the beach, like sipping mojitos, uninterrupted, watching the sunrise and sunset when you're on vacation with kids?
Oh, no. It's like another job.
It's another job.
Yeah.
The definition, the very same thing. It's the same word,
Right.
right? The definition of vacation is completely different when you have
That
kids,
makes sense. Yes.
right? So you've got to redefine.
Yeah.
You got to redefine what success looks like. What does school look like? What does work look like? What do relationships look like? And just set the bar really low. Like,
Yeah.
set it low so that you can at least identify, like, what can I be happy with,
Hmm.
right? If 1 hour of uninterrupted time with your kids, or with work, twice a day or 3 times a day, then that gives you 3 hours of time. If that's success, all of a sudden, like, what you've just done is you've released yourself from holding this ideal of what work is, holding this ideal of what school is, and it's in the release that you create freedom, right? The reason that people are, sorry, I
That's
got
all right.
a little one that are like, hey, the reason that you're the reason that people are so frustrated and overwhelmed and scared is not necessarily has to do with the coronavirus, though it's a huge contributor to it. It's because they don't know what to do with what they've got right now,
Right.
and they're trying to uphold a definition that's just, for at least the time being, let's all agree that it needs to be redefined.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. That takes a lot of the pressure off. And so the way, since the definition is redefined, what homeschooling or what the education looks like is being redefined,
Mm-hmm.
then the scale of success or failure in that needs to really be adjusted and changed. I think for a lot of parents, it probably is, that concept is hard to swallow,
Which one?
especially as, the kids get older, they're learning different things than I learned when I was in high school. And, take high school, for example, I probably would not be able to help my children with their homework, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in math or whatever. They're learning differently. Like even the way they get to an answer is different than it used to be in some cases. And so, some parents may feel inadequate to really even be able to help their kids. So what advice would you give to a parent that's in that situation?
Yeah, I would say try to meet them where they're at,
Hmm.
right? Like, chances are, even if you weren't like a whiz in calculus and didn't know how to take the integrals of, such and such, there's plenty of resources out there that do know that, right? And we're starting to tread into this area of, like, different types of curriculum, right? So, like, there's going to be resources for any type of curriculum, right? But for most school curriculums, like, what I found to be really helpful is the Khan Academy, right? The Khan Academy is a free resource. They do videos and they teach all these different elements all the way up from kindergarten throughout high school and SAT prep and all that jazz.
Uh-huh.
Really valuable. And, for those of you who are like, well, Scott, I'm completely against the Common Core and that's Common Core based and all that jazz. Listen, I'm not an educational curriculum expert, but what I will recommend is that you be able to find something online that at least creates a trigger point, right? For you and or for your child. And here's the joy in that, right? What you're doing is you're showing them to be resourceful when you don't know. Like, when you don't know the answer, you dad, you mom, when you don't know the answer, you're showing them, well, here's how I would go about getting it.
Right.
And they'd be like, well, that's not the right way. Well, listen, guys, school is not the world. School's not the way that the business world works. It's not the way the marketplace works. And we won't get in a polarizing discussion here, but the idea is the way that we problem solve has everything to do with how well we can be successful in any endeavor, right? So if you have a certain problem solving way of going about it, show your kids that.
Yeah.
Like, show them those things. And at the worst case scenario, you get a good laugh because mom doesn't know how to do, calculus, and you just taught mom or dad something,
Right. Yeah.
and it's a cool opportunity. That's where people miss it. Like, they define success as getting the right answer, right? But it's like those you're in Palm Springs, right? So
Yep.
we're in Florida. There's a lot of Jeeps around here. If you ever see like a Jeep Wrangler and you've got that like the tire cover on the back, my favorite one is like when it says, the journey is the destination.
Mm.
And that's the definition that I like to hold with homeschool.
Yeah.
Right? Like in school, listen, I was public school, all that stuff. My oldest was public school and private school up until he was about 7. But school is about the destination. Homeschool is really about the journey, right? It's
Right.
about like how do you get to that thing, right? Of course the destination is important, but quite honestly, like last week, Jason, like I'm sitting at my computer doing work, I get interrupted, and I decide, you know what, I'm going to use this interruption because I was designing things on my computer. And I taught my kids graphic design for like 35 minutes. The
Wow.
next 3 days in a row, they wanted to do their own name logos. I've got 3 kids now who like think graphic design is the coolest thing, and they don't think it's hard.
Right.
For me, personally, I started graphic designing like 2 months ago because I never really believed I was creative.
Mm-hmm.
But holy moly, I've got this really great graphic design ability. And now my kids know that they can make a logo like that in a matter of minutes.
Wow.
Right? Like
Yep.
that is an interruption used. And listen, that's not all like it's not like it's pixie dust and unicorns. That just happened to be like I was ready for a break. They came in, I taught them, hey, let's make your name on a design element, right? That's the journey. And it got us to a destination. Now, if I started off being like, today we're going to learn how to graphic design. We need to make sure we have enough white space and positioning. You know what I mean? They'd
Right.
be like, what? This sucks. I don't
Yeah.
want to do this.
Exactly. My son, who's in 2nd grade, his teacher told us in the very beginning, I love her style. She told us in the first meeting, she said, I'm not going to guarantee that all your kids are going to get A's, that they're all going to get perfect grades. But by the end of the year, they will know how to learn. They will learn how to find the answer.
That's good.
If they don't know the answer, they will learn how to find it. And I really appreciated that because that's different thinking than instead of just saying, okay, you've got to learn this and this and this and be very structured about it. And then if you don't know it, then too bad. Sucks to be you. But okay, how can I get the answer? And that's a whole other mindset that in this time is really helpful to have. As parents, we want to instill that mindset to our kids, but as parents, again, like Google it. There's a lot of ways to get information. Even with curriculums, there's a ton of different curriculums out there, and they all are different. And, I really believe that this is an opportunity. If parents really push themselves through this and push through everything is hard in the beginning, right? So we're learning something new. It's painful. Yeah. If we could push through it and see the gold in it, see our relationships with our children be strengthened, and then imagine you don't have to give the teacher credit anymore for their education. You're taking the responsibility and you're giving something that's going to help them the rest of their life.
Totally.
What kind of honor and is that? That's huge. I think that a lot of parents next year are not going to send their kids to school. They're going to see the value in this, and they're going to enjoy the responsibility of this journey. And I'm excited about that personally.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more with everything that you just said. And there's two things that you said that I want to just highlight. And it was about your children will know how to learn, right? Part of the way, I'm a personal growth junkie, right? But part of the way that I find anchor quotes. Right? I'm not just a quote floozy where I just throw quotes out and I live my life by all these quotes, right? But there's this one quote that I really, really, really believe in, and it says most people. Now it's gonna go out of my head. Most people want to be taught what to think, not how to think.
Yes, that's so true.
Right? And if you really ask yourself that, right? If you really ask yourself that question, we're all guilty of that to a certain degree,
Yeah.
right? Because we develop trust with a person or a level, um, or a teacher or somebody, and we just stop thinking critically for ourselves. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
super critical. No pun intended. But on the other end of that, what you said was it's hard, right? Now, I'm a simple guy, right? I like to simplify the complex. So things right now are hard. But hard does not mean bad. Hard does not equal bad.
That's true.
But like people need to hear that. When you start to ask yourself, like, when has hard not equaled bad?
Hmm.
Like I worked out this morning and it was hard. It wasn't bad. I went on a
Yeah.
bike ride with all my kids, my whole family 2 nights ago. It was hard, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Right? So when we start to disassociate these generalizations, right? Most people are taught what to think, not how to think. Okay, so hard isn't bad. Well, what is hard? Hard is a natural thing when you're growing, like you said, right?
Mm.
Growth, like when you're in it, when you're confused, that's a good thing,
Yeah.
right? And people are like, Scott, you sound a little bit crazy right now. How is that a good thing? The reason it's a good thing is because think about the confusion, right? Your mind is creating all these new neurological pathways to figure the thing out, whatever it is. I've got
Yeah.
a 21-month-old at home. He's figuring things out, right? When he hears an airplane, he says airplane and he looks up to the ceiling, but he doesn't know that the airplane's not in the house yet.
Right.
Right? So he goes outside. So like we're figuring things out. Hard is good and confusion is leading to growth. You're actually learning something new and it's expanding you beyond your current abilities. So if we start to redefine what hard means, if we start to
Yes.
redefine what school means, if we start to redefine what relationship looks like, all of a sudden like our redefinition, and gosh, somebody needs to hear this right now.
Yeah.
The redefinition of what those things are become what we want them to be
Mm.
because they've been served to us. And it's not your fault that they've been served to you. They've served you well. They've served me well. But at some point in time, we outgrow the definition of whatever somebody looks like. Here's what I mean.
Yeah.
We outgrow the definition of vacation. Those first couple of vacations after kids, they were not fun. I was frustrated. I didn't get any great time with my wife or any of this amazing vacation time. They weren't what I would consider vacation until I redefined what vacation was.
Right. Hmm.
So with homeschool, here's an encouragement. Like the first year of homeschool was not fun because what was I doing? I'm a product of public and university all the way up, through university. I'm a product of that. So I just tried to bring school home and it wasn't fun. I was putting way too many expectations on young kids. So I redefined it and then we made it fun. Is it always fun? No.
Right.
Is it better? Yeah. One more definition, freedom.
Mm.
Most people right now, if you ask them if they had freedom, they would tell you it's the furthest from freedom. Right? But think about it for a second. Like we've all existed with certain systems and structures in place. And those systems and structures a lot of times create comfort. School creates comfort. Yes, it's comfortable for you to have some breathing time and your kids to be somewhere where they're being served and educated somewhere else. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But now there's freedom from those things and you get to create what you want from it.
Yeah.
And then opportunities. So now that we start to unpack these things a little bit deeper, now we can go back to the beginning of our talk when we talked about the have to get to. They start to make a little bit more sense, it's just more applicable to why we might want to put such an emphasis on the difference in those two words.
Yeah. And thinking about all of that, you can take this as deep as you want to. As a parent, it's really up to you now. I mean, the keys, everything, the ball's in your court. The keys are in your hand. You can apply this and go deep and build a strong connection and have a lot of fun and be the educator to your children. Or you can put them in a room and tell them to come out when they're done with their work. And I hope that doesn't happen, because anybody that does that, I mean, I understand the thought behind it. And I understand, that desperation, that feeling that you might feel that might cause that, but you're missing out on a huge opportunity. One of the things that we talked about a few minutes ago is, you mentioned that a lot of the education, teaches our kids what to think, and instead of how to think. And I immediately, when you said that, I thought, it's so true. And I thought, how does that play out years down the road? Let's, if we could teach our kids how to think early, what would their life look like when they reach middle school? They wouldn't give in to peer pressure. They wouldn't give in to bullying and the different things that, kids can find themselves caught up in later, because they're now critical thinkers. They're now ones that'll think a little bit more about the situation and what's happening, instead of just, oh, I was told to do this, or I was just a black and white response.
Oh man, there's some serious fire on that, because we could just throw out some really simple things to get people what happens is, all right, everybody listening and watching, what happens is when you hear new information, you have a choice to be open-minded about it or closed-minded about it. Yeah. And most of us, because we've been taught what to think, not how to think, are closed-minded, right? Because, hey, this equals that. Hard equals bad. Well, does hard always equal bad, right? So does hard always equal bad is a how to think question. So at least open your minds to a couple of quick examples, right? And I want you to answer them for yourself. And Jason, you're going to have to be the voice of their subconscious for a second. All right. So some simple sayings that are all over the place that maybe we could redefine or at least reconsider. All right. Early bird gets the worm.
I have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Or who says there's only one worm?
Right.
We so ingrained in scarcity that you have to be early in order to get the thing? Like right place at the right time.
Probably won't make it.
I'll tell you something, we won't go off on this tangent right now, but my dad passed away 3 days ago, and I just landed one of the biggest contracts I've ever done. That kind of sounds like the wrong place at the right time to me.
Yeah.
I've been at the wrong place at the wrong time, and good things happen.
Right. Yep.
Right. So, okay. So, follow the leader. What do you think about follow the leader?
I'm a follower.
Why not be the leader?
Yep.
Follow the leader? Well, Scott, you're taking this too far. That only means following people in class. It doesn't matter what it means to you as an adult with a fully developed frontal cortex that can reason.
Yeah.
But up until age 6, they can't reason. Everything just goes boop right into the subconscious mind and programs.
Yeah.
It's a really big deal, guys. If we could at least consider the idea of critical thinking to say, well, why would we do it this way? Right? So again, we're taking these massive principles that might not be accepted by all, and we're taking them or we're putting them in different contexts, because it helps us when we take something out of their context. What happens is we cut all the ties that exist, all those beliefs and those root systems, and we just say, okay, well, let's just put it over here and to see if it still fits. Mm. All right. So here's a good example. Critical thinking from a coach's perspective, right? I want you to think of your favorite sports player. In these cases, I like to think of tennis, golf, individual sports,
right.
Swimming, right? Is Michael Phelps' coach a better swimmer than Michael Phelps?
Yeah, no.
Is Venus Williams or Serena Williams' tennis coach a better tennis player than Venus or Serena Williams? No. Is Cristiano Ronaldo's soccer coach better than he is? Probably not.
Right.
right? But what are they doing? Like, they're taking information for face value and they're asking a question about it. And what the question allows is two different thoughts, yes or no, right? Hey, this, I bet you I could be Venus Williams' coach for an afternoon, right? You see that the ball didn't go in. Hey, what did you do differently that time? What could you change next time about it? Yeah, I saw that your hips were a little too high on that one, right? He's not a better coach than or player than she is.
Right.
The purpose is that the process of critical thinking can be applied to everything. And if we can just at least consider some alternatives and redefine those things, all of a sudden, like, we get a whole bunch of freedom from it. And it's a really big deal. And it feels really good because then you have, I was going to say control, but you don't have control. You have like influence.
Yes.
You have influence over this area of your life that you didn't have influence on before.
Right.
And the problem is the only problem with what we're talking about right now is that once you're aware of something, then you're responsible for that thing.
That's true.
Right? So some of you might want to be blissfully unaware, but I would recommend not to be, because just think, again, we're going to critically think about the statement I just make, so we don't just accept everything that Jason or Scott says for face value. What I just said was, once we're aware of something, then we become responsible for that thing. Okay. A good example would be maybe you are very passionate about non-GMO related foods and products. Okay. Before you know what GMO was, you probably weren't all that passionate about it, but your awareness increased. You recognize what genetic modification does, what it is, how it affects you, and how it can affect your children. And all of a sudden, holy moly, I am non-GMO all the time, right? Or here's another example, BPA free. Now, BPA is relatively mainstream, but 10 years ago, BPA was not mainstream. Right? We didn't know, we had to buy all new BPA free bottles for our babies because BPA was a bad thing. I don't even know what it is, but I know I don't want it.
Right.
Right? So awareness increased, responsibility increases. Just a good example so that you can recognize what that looks like and why it might feel like, what do I do with this? It's because now you're more aware.
Yeah.
And that awareness requires a responsibility.
Definitely. I think it's important to emphasize that the parents, like you said, you don't have to be better, as the coach, you're essentially coaching your children. You don't have to be better at everything and know more than them. You don't have to be an expert in all the curriculum because you're the coach. You're there to help them learn how to learn how to figure it out. Even when I work and help my kids with their homework, I never give them the answers. Even if I know the answer, I don't give it to them. I ask them, go back and read that again. Think about this when you read it. Or, take your time. You want to do this activity after your homework, but you're here now. Focus on this. It's more about helping them position themselves to learn.
Yeah.
And so that takes a lot of the weight off. It takes that responsibility. You don't have to know everything to be able to do this. And I think
and of course it's different with ages, like you said, right? My 5-year-old, my 6-year-old can't read yet. Mm-hmm. So I got to read her workbook, right? I got to help her understand what these things mean. So, but yeah, it's very interesting when you just give someone an opportunity to take the responsibility for themselves. Yeah. Right? Because you're teaching them to take that same responsibility. I mean, I was super jacked because my 5-year-old, now 6, she finished her kindergarten curriculum before Christmas.
Wow.
I had no idea that she was working so quickly through her stuff. But sure enough, you know what I mean? She did it because she really enjoys writing.
Wow.
I might not have recognized that as much, And I recognize one other thing about my daughter is that, you know what? She doesn't actually want to take a break like the boys would. The boys might want to go out on the trampoline. She wants to draw on her breaks. So throughout our, less than 2-year homeschooling process, we've identified things that the kids really, really enjoy. And quite honestly, we've identified where there's some potential break points. Like my 8-year-old, he likes to hide and not really want to read. Right. So you get to really identify those self-esteem things that could really hurt you later on in, like you said, in middle school. Oh,
Yeah.
hey, Bubba.
Hey,
Here
buddy.
he is. This is Noah. I hope you're
Hey,
wearing
Noah.
clothes.
I'm not.
Okay.
That's why I'm behind you.
Okay. All right. I need to continue with my interview.
Did you hide the treasure?
No, not yet. We're going to do a treasure hunt.
Oh, nice.
And I told them I was going to make. So again, here's a quick example. My daughter made a treasure map this morning.
Uh-huh.
And I said, you know what I'm gonna do this afternoon? While you guys are in the house, I'm gonna go and dig treasure. I'm gonna put treasure in. I'm gonna give you each a treasure map with some clues, and you're gonna have to find the treasure.
So, but is the treasure gonna be like big?
I don't know yet. I haven't found the treasure.
You need to find it to hide it.
Kinda. But hey, can I have maybe like 10 extra minutes? Okay.
Can I have like maybe something?
No, maybe in the treasure. Okay.
Got to find it.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. That's a great example. And even in just that simple example, you're teaching them to not quit, to not give up, and that there is a reward for effort.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Totally.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah, this is really, really powerful stuff. I'm sure that, we could go back and take just the 2 or 3 things that, that have been really powerful here and talk about them for a long time. But let's talk a little bit to the parents that may just feel like they just can't do it. And they would rather take their kids and drop them off at a relative's house. And I'm sure there's some parents that are still working that maybe they have had to really like this adjustment of having to stay home or figure out how to get their kids homeschooled or educated while they work. There's some families out there that both parents or maybe single parents, they're working and they can't stop. And so, that's something that we really haven't talked about a whole lot. And I know that there's many, many families out there that are in that place. So the only time that an opportunity they may have is when they get home from work. There's just a couple hour window there. They have to get laundry done, dinner done, and education done.
Yep. In those cases, honestly, I would just read.
Yeah.
For, I would say, probably almost the entire first 6 months of our homeschooling process, we didn't actually school. There's this idea called unschooling. We actually had to come out of the system and the habits and the behaviors and all that stuff of school so that we could redefine what we wanted. And we read ferociously.
Wow.
Right? And one thing that we would do in that reading process, and you might think, well, reading, Scott, but what about math? Math will come. Don't worry. Right. Reading is one of the things that creates some of the biggest impact that you can have as an adult, right? The chances of you having to do algebra 2 after 8th grade are very slim. And I don't mean to make light of it, but it's the reality. I was a biology major, microbiology minor, calculus, all that stuff. Organic chemistry, haven't used it a day in my life. The idea is to create the reading and then to stop and ask. And I was blown away by the comprehension of my then 7 and then 4-year-old, that they could comprehend some of these things. They could start to anticipate things. And I'd be like, what do you think is going to happen? Right? You're starting to teach them about foreshadowing and about listening and about visualizing. And even to this day, they have some of the best, creative memories. Yeah. So that's the redefinition piece, right? You've got an hour with your kids, right? You got an hour with your kids. You know what? Bedtimes might be a little bit looser now that everybody's home.
Right.
Man, spend 30 minutes reading. I highly, highly, highly recommend, and this is not I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's a kid-friendly book series. It's called Land of Stories. Highly recommend it. Chris Colfer is the author. It's very like, it's a very family friendly, but it's also adventurous, and it's this cool, imaginative sort of fairy tales meets real life sort of thing. It's very cool.
Yeah.
There's 6 or 7 books in the series. During this time, you could probably bust out a book every month, and you'll be done, and you won't want to stop. So I would just
Right.
find whatever your things are, man. Like if all you have is an hour, then make that hour, define that as your success, and read.
The teacher I mentioned earlier for my son, the second grader, in the beginning of the year in that meeting, she also mentioned that she's extending like the reading, and she's going to cut out science. And she said that she's doing this because they're going to read science books. So she's essentially, expanding on the reading part and comprehension, and the subjects that they're going to be reading about is science. So they're going to get that as well, but focusing on reading, comprehension, writing, those things. So the value in that is awesome.
Super. It's fantastic. And we we really like the Who's Who books. They're more like, second, third, fourth grade, maybe fifth grade, like biography sort of books. They're short. They teach them about history. They teach them about the people, and they're also reading those things, and I don't know, man, it's like some of the things that are just super helpful to just kind of do right along with them. So, if you want to do a quick little graphic design, you can go to Canva, set up a free account, make some logos. There's a bunch of free resources out there. The New York Library basically is giving free access to like 300,000 books, right? I think it's Epic for Kids books. There's like 30,000 books that you can download for free.
Wow.
So there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of great organizations doing a lot of great things to make it easier for parents.
Yeah.
We've even considered, honestly, I don't know if you've ever saw on Facebook, those ads that come through, the masterclass ads. We've even considered having our daughter do an acting masterclass. Simple stuff like that, like little ways, because if you think about it, ever since I graduated, right, I've probably spent more time studying and learning the things that I really wanted to study and learn.
Yeah.
And if I could give that gift back, but advance it earlier on in their life, how much more impactful would they be, right? They say you roughly need about 10,000 hours, which is about 5 years of study to be an expert in something.
Wow.
Right? So 10,000 hours, 5 years of study, about 2,000 hours a year. It's kind of a cool idea. I may have botched that stat. Whatever the stat is, you can be an expert in something in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, definitely. And then as we learn about our kids, we discover, give them the freedom to learn too. I think that's something else that happens in this environment when we're in control and responsible for our kids' education, is that we give our kids a little bit more room to develop their own appetite, to develop their own desire, to develop, what it is, because everything else can be so structured. And if we overstructure the education, then it's just, we're back to just learn what I tell you and don't think, don't learn how to find answers, just know that this is the answer. Don't worry about how we got there.
Right.
But then when our kids actually have the space to explore their desires and explore, like you said, like you did, giving them access to graphic design, giving them access to different things that, maybe wouldn't have happened in a different situation. Then our kids can, we learn what are their God-given motivations. And then as we feed those, then they come alive even more, and then they enjoy learning that much more in something that will probably actually add value to their long life.
Yeah. Well, it's such a perfect example, right? I mean, very well articulated. And one example that came to mind when you said that was, we let our kids create their own YouTube channel. Now it's under our parent channel, right? So it's nested under our channel, has all the permissions and all that jazz, but they get to create their own channel. And what's interesting is when they do the videos, they're like, oh man, I wasn't really speaking very, very clearly.
Wow.
You know, the light didn't seem that great. So all of a sudden, there's all these new opportunities to talk about light. And where would you want to put the camera if you want good light? And, you know, you can see that you need a little bit more energy when you're on camera, right? You
Yeah.
need to stand up and you need to project. It's a cool way to get engaged in that way, to teach them things that, shoot, I don't know. I mean, they're probably more important now than they were when we were kids. That's for sure.
Yes. Yep. There's a revolution coming, Scott, and I'm passionate about this one because, sorry,
You're good.
I think that when I was a kid, parents were heroes.
Mm.
You know, stories that we would read, parents were heroes. Now, largely, they're made fun of.
Hmm.
They're on TV, you know, a lot of the shows, parents are not taken seriously. And this is important because I think that we now have an opportunity to grow in our parent in that part and become heroes to our children.
Amen.
I think that this is a time where we have that opportunity. Everything is calmed down now. Everything is quieter now. And we have a window of opportunity to be the hero to our kid. We've got to take that stand. Kids are in trouble, largely. You know, my daughter was in middle school, and that middle school, it wasn't the school, it was just, you know, that the age and the things that were happening in that school, and frankly, the things that were tolerated in that school nearly destroyed her. And, you know, most parents don't have, in the outside world, I know that in our circles, you know, a lot of parents are engaged, and I hope that as a parent you're engaged with your child, but there's always room to grow. And this is a window of opportunity to learn a different way of doing things that will impact our children for their life, and restore the family, restore that sense of, you know, my dad or my mom, they're amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm excited about that one.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. This is a time, and it doesn't have to be hard. You don't have to reconstruct everything. But the things that you do need to change are your expectations and definitions of things, so that you can set yourself up to be successful, right? What does success look like? Remind yourself, right, that like the children, having a childlike like learner's mindset is critical. As adults, we're so quick to self-judge ourselves, right? To judge ourselves and to shame ourselves because it's hard, and we think that that means we should stop, when in reality that's a sign of growth and a sign of advancement.
Yeah.
It's under resistance that we're actually getting stronger. That if that's true in the gym, then it's certainly true emotionally,
Right.
mentally, spiritually.
Yep.
Right? Things under pressure create strength, right?
Definitely.
When there's resistance. So we have to redefine resistance. We have to recognize that it doesn't have to be Pinterest perfect. Make that hour that you have with your kids before they go to sleep an hour of reading, right? Ask them what they like about school. Ask them what they don't like about school. Learn about why they might not like it. You know what? You might find that little Sally or little Johnny is a fantastic reader, but they mispronounced a word once when they had to read out loud, and now they feel really insecure in front of everyone. You can build that back up. It's a really unique opportunity. And if we really are honest with ourselves and think back to the things that we thought were a really big deal as we were kids, they're not as big of a deal now, but they did have a pretty significant impact. So even one degree of separation from the desired, you know, destination early on in age can create you can be really off track by the time you're an adult.
Yeah. Yep. That's very good. So true. Although it's the little choices, it's the little things that, lots of little choices that are good. It really sets that direction, and it can keep us on course, with our kids and in this journey called parenting.
Yes, sir. That's what intentionality is all about.
Yeah,
It's
right.
about thinking, like, not just accepting what to think, but think how to think. How do you want to think about this? How do you want to define it? How do you want to operate in it?
Yeah,
And if you don't ask yourself the real question and give yourself a real answer,
right.
right? If you don't want to because I just can't, right? Why not?
Yeah, that's
Because you don't want to, because you don't have, like, what is it? It's got to be something deeper. It's always something deeper. If you feel insecure, get around other people who also feel insecure about the thing but are still moving in imperfect action, because there's no perfect way of doing it, right? All those
yes,
homeschool moms that are now like the heroes of the world, well, they were you at some point in time, at
yeah,
some day in time.
for
It's
sure.
overwhelming for everyone.
Wow, man, can't believe an hour has already passed. Uh, any final thoughts on parenting intentionally? I,
I don't, my wife and I started a group called Being with the Benhams, and it's really for these sorts of purposes.
yeah,
We really felt God call us a number of years ago to invite people into our lives and to exhibit a level of vulnerability that's uncommon in most circles,
yeah,
for really two specific reasons. The first one is to just practice vulnerability and practice connection with others. But next is, the benefit is that, like, we find that we get breakthrough and give people a breakthrough and freedom by sharing those things.
right.
So it's like doing life with each other virtually. And I mean, we're pretty young in the process, but we really feel like there's something there for people to glean, not because we do it right,
Yeah,
but because we do it and we're not afraid to be wrong.
yeah, that's awesome. I know I've been in that group, and it's great. So if you're listening here, being with the Benhams, it's a Facebook group, private group, and we'll put the link into the comments here. Make sure you if you can join it. It's a lot of fun. Like you said, it's you guys are very vulnerable, and it's very appreciated. It's authentic, and it's a great way to connect and see that life doesn't have to be. It's spontaneous. It's fun, and it doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to be the perfect day, the perfect system. But you can take advantage of different opportunities. So just even watching that and seeing you guys in action, it can be a great way to get ideas, to learn. I've done graphic design for years. I never really thought about getting my kids involved in that. I was like, so when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's good. It's awesome. So, yeah, well, thank you again for joining us. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Yeah, no
It's a
problem.
pleasure.
Sure, we'll have you again at some point in the future. So next week we have your wife on. So
Yeah.
next week she's coming on.
She's the real expert
So you've learned everything from her.
for the most part.
Well, we're excited to have her on, and definitely it's been an awesome moment here with you. So definitely appreciate it, and we look forward to next time.
Sounds good, Jason.
All right.
Thanks so much.
No, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys. Again, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. It was an awesome time. So next week, I'll post the event later today. We're going to have Kaylin Benham on, Scott's wife, and we're going to continue the talk on parenting intentionally. So I can't wait for that session. You guys have a great week. We'll try to come back towards the end of the week and do a little training. If you have questions or comments, please put them in the comments. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Definitely, I want to hear from you guys. If you have a question for next week's episode, I'll be sure that we get it on the program, and we'd love to be able to connect with you guys in that way. So you guys take care, and we'll see you all soon.